So as I was reflecting on the readings for this Sunday, my upcoming trip to Israel popped into my mind. It's happening in June. I thought to myself, imagine what it would be like to go to Israel and do a self-guided tour. Now, maybe you're a lot braver than I am, but I'd have a meltdown. I'd be totally stressed. I'd probably lose a lot of weight. I wouldn't know where to go, how to maximize my time, how to learn about the sites and the richness of every single site in the Holy Land. That's where God walked on earth. It's like the ultimate item in your bucket list. God walked on the earth, his own creation. It's incomprehensible. And some of the stones are still there from the time of Jesus Christ. Same thing in Rome, actually. The time when Caesar would have gone over the cobblestones. It kind of blows your mind because we're such a young country. Undoubtedly, I would get lost if I did try to go on my own, and who knows where I would wander into. Maybe you'd never hear from me again. So I would probably revert, knowing myself, to my default and stay in my room and not go anywhere until my return flight had to take me out of the country. Life can be something like a self-guided tour to Israel, taking into account in this case that you have never been there and you really don't know anything about the layout. We go through life, we're doing our own thing. We think we're doing it on our own devices, our own talents, our own gifts. We're making so many decisions. My project managers told me once that this school and Paris Center and daycare involves about 4,000 or 5,000 decisions. I'm glad I didn't have to make them. This guy is so talented, he's so gifted. To try and keep all that in some sort of order so things are happening when they should is mind-blowing. So, we go through life with our own decisions. Some are pretty innocuous, but even the unimportant ones seemingly unimportant, like they're not life-changing, like who takes out the garbage? If you don't take it out enough, it's going to be like a big decision. Who makes the bed? All those kind of things. But the big decisions can be buy this house, townhouse, condo, do I marry this person? Huge, major, life-changing decisions. And we think that somehow we're doing this without any influence from others, like I'm making the decision. Or so we think. And yet so many things are influencing us, that we're perhaps some of which we are maybe aware of and others we are not. Social media, mentioned last week, Instagram's own internal studies show that their platform is harmful to teenage girls, and they do nothing about it. I think it was leaked. So they did their own internal study about imaging problems, trying to measure up to other people, all the bullying that takes place, but it's more this imaging thing. So we think we're not influenced, but it's huge. We're influenced by somebody outside of ourselves. The news, colleagues, even our own distorted internal selves, because we all want to be loved. And if we're not aware of this, we can be easily manipulated, very easily. And I'm not saying we shouldn't want to be loved. It's a human need. But who do we allow into our space, into our life, and how do we allow them, and so on and so on. So many decisions we have to make. Does it ever occur to you to ask or to think, who is my tour guide, through life? Who gets the most rental space in my head, my heart? And then perhaps leads to bodily actions. Is it all the ads I see on TV, which leads me to spend money more than I have, more than I should spend, gambling? It just goes on and on and on. Jesus is not only our ultimate tour guide, but he's much, much more than this. To use the language of today's gospel, Jesus is not only a shepherd. Remember the 3 shepherds, they were called by the angel to go and see the Christ child. They were shepherds. But he is the good shepherd, and he identifies himself not just as a shepherd, but the good shepherd, which to the ears of everybody around him, they knew what that meant, as I'll mention very, very briefly in a brief moment. Jesus offers a clear contrast among shepherds. This contrast is something the poor tour guides, many of us choose. The self-guided tours through life that we all too often settle for, thinking that we're so smart, we have all that it takes, we can do it on our own. And so often they lead to nowhere. Perhaps tragic mistakes or great sins. And it sometimes takes a long time. Hopefully these are mistakes or sins that we can recover from. Some of them, maybe not. We don't know. In the gospel, God fulfills a promise he made a long time ago back through the prophet Ezekiel, that he would be the shepherd who would show us not only how to get to heaven, but how to live a full human life here on earth. Remember, Jesus, it's not a matter of just reaching our final goal. You can reach it and you can be a wreck. Or you can reach it and you can actually have lived a full human life. Jesus said, I came that you may have life and have it to the full. He didn't mean a perpetual Friday party night. What he meant was a life of virtue. Because the fullness of life, the biblical understanding of the fullness of life is not a life of sensual pleasure, which can, we all know can manipulate us and lead us down a very dark hole. But rather it's a life of virtue. That's the fullness of life. To have we're striving to attain or acquire all the virtues will lead to true happiness in life. And I would submit that a lot of people, they don't understand this, or they're really scared if they do begin to understand it, because there is no happiness without sacrifice. It doesn't exist. And if someone is trying to teach you that, or you think that, it's a lie. It just doesn't exist. Anybody in a good marriage knows this. If you want to be really happy, you can never have that without sacrifice. But it's not a negative thing. Often we see it that way, and we're tricked or seduced or led astray by the fact that I need to assert my own self, and so on and so on. Jesus says, I have come myself and to shepherd my sheep. It would seem that no one or very few people actually took God at his own word, because God through the prophet said, I will come myself. He didn't say, I will send a representative. He did send those, that was the prophets. But he said, I will come myself because my shepherds are fleecing the sheep, which means the priests were fleecing the sheep in the time of Ezekiel, and God took a strip off of them. But Jesus did show up, and he said, I am. So those words to the people he's speaking to, I am who I am. He's saying it in such a way that they understand it's not like I would say, well, I am going to the store. They understand I am the good shepherd. I'm the one Ezekiel talked about centuries ago, when God said, I will come myself, so I am God. And don't think twice that they don't know what he's saying. So he's catching their attention, whether, good or bad, negative or positive, but they know what he's saying, that God has fulfilled his word. He has fulfilled the promise he made that he will come himself, so much does he love his children. This doesn't happen in any of the Greek pantheon or the Roman pantheon or any of the other deities other religions purport to believe in. Only this God, the God of Israel, the God of the universe, does this for us. I mean, he's personally involved. We think sometimes he's on a vacation. Maybe he doesn't exist because of all the hell breaking loose in the world. But, that's another conversation as to why all that bad stuff happens. But no one comes to us in a crib all the way to the cross, and is God who made everything. It's mind-blowing. As the Good Shepherd himself comes into the world and into our lives, he calls us to follow him. He states very clearly that he is the Good Shepherd, that he is here to offer us three things that only he can offer us. And I would put forward, if you can find a better deal when I remind you what the promises are, go for it. And in fact, tell me what the better deal is, and I'll preach it till I'm dead. I'm serious. Just listen to these promises. He says, first of all, I will give you eternal life. That's not where it stops, though. I will give you, because the devil could say, I'll give you eternal life, but that means you'll be in hell. It's not eternal life. That's eternal misery. It is eternal life, but it's a lie, because it's not the fulfillment of what we want. what we desire, what we hunger for in the next world. We want to be happy. We can never be happy with the liar, with the father of lies. I'll give you eternal life. Number 2, I will give you salvation. Read the readings again on your own when you go home. I will give you salvation. You'll never die. But this, of course, means spiritually speaking, because Jesus said, what is a profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? So yes, we have to take care of our physical self, but never to the detriment of our immortal soul, because the body will die one day, we'll have to return to the dust, but on the last day of the world, it will be resurrected and reconstituted and reunited with our soul, wherever it is, in hell or in heaven. So I'll give you salvation, he's saying to them. I'll actually bring you into eternal life, into the life of the Trinity. And 3, while you're here in this world, I will protect you from the devil. Jesus doesn't use the specific words, but I'll give you protection from the evil one. So not only I will protect you, but I will help you to live the life that will bring you the fullness of happiness in this world. Now you think with that kind of promise, who would reject him? But we have difficulties trusting God, because we know instinctively this has got to mean we got to pay for this. And I don't mean money-wise, although that's another conversation too. But we have to be willing to sacrifice our desires at times for inordinate pleasures. Or just me, I, the unholy trinity, like me, myself, and I. We have to die to ourselves. This is the only thing that forges our character. How does Jesus tell us he is going to deliver these promises? It is by sacrificing himself on the cross. Greater love no one has than he who lays down his life for another. And he says, now, love one another as I have loved you. So imitate me, the Good Shepherd. I will show you how to love each other. Everything else falls flat. Eventually, it will be deceiving, and it will be probably manipulative at some point, or at least it will be deficient. We'll run out of steam, because we're limited creatures. Even the best of us who are very resilient from a natural point of view, we have limited energy. But Jesus has infinite power, infinite energy. He did this by sacrificing himself on the cross, founding his church, and giving us the power of his love through the sacraments. By way of ministry of Peter, the one whom Jesus told to feed my lambs, tend my flock, and so on, the end of John's gospel. The Good Shepherd has established an earthly tour guide and spiritual father over all of us, and that is Peter and his successors, who are tasked to remind us of what Jesus taught and how to get to heaven. That's the main function of the Vicar of Christ, the Pope. Jesus said, when you have recovered, Peter, when you've recovered from denying me, now your task is to strengthen your brethren. And you'll do that from your recovered sin, your weakness, meaning your fellow bishops, but also, and with the idea, of course, that the bishops would strengthen their clergy and their people, so it would basically trickle down, or trickle out, if you will, to the whole people of God. That's the main function of Peter. Jesus perfectly manifested sacrificial love as the divine shepherd. He was willing to go all the way to the cross for us. He did not let suffering, persecution, rejection deter him from his responsibility of caring for us in a total and complete way. Jesus shows us in a way, in fact, what it means to love somebody 100%. That's why it's so important that we take him as our mentor and our model. Because we all know, just, with friendships breaking up, the hatred that's in society, it's not everywhere, but we all know it's out there. Social media, marriages going through really difficult times. This can be really hard for us. So we need somebody to mentor us and model for us what it means to love. Now, parents want to do that for their children. Mothers and fathers, with all their imperfections, they want to love their kids. They want their kids to have the absolute best from them. They do. They know they don't always measure up to that. But parents and mothers and fathers and priests, all of us really need to look to Christ. Because Jesus says, I'll show you how to do this. But you got to be with me 100% though, not 99. It doesn't work that way with him. Because then the 1% is still me. I'll do it my way. Jesus says, no, you got to do it with me 100%. And if you do, I promise you, if you really give me a chance in your life, I'll show you what it means to really love somebody And it won't be manipulative, it won't be domineering, it won't be self-centered, all that stuff that we all resent when we experience it in our life. But this will actually lead to real happiness. He also teaches us the dangers of relying on ourselves or bad to false tour guides of a hired man who is not the shepherd. A little further down, if you read the Good Shepherd discourse, who basically sees problems coming, the wolf coming, and runs. So people, so many of these so-called guides that we listen to all too often or too much, they don't really have a personal interest in us as an individual. They're not willing to stick with us all the way and guide us through all the difficulties and hardships of life. Jesus Christ is. Even though I walk in the valley of darkness, I fear no evil, because you are with me, you're at my side, guiding me and watching over me and protecting me and helping me to navigate through these difficult times. We should see in this hired man the temptation we all inevitably face in life. It's hard to stick with it through hard times. It can be really hard to stick with it, to have that stick with it power in hard times. It's easy when it's easy, but that doesn't really forge our character. It's the other times that we really, truly appreciate when we receive that from somebody. It's hard to be there for those who need us when they need us and not according to our schedule. Life doesn't always present itself as a schedule to us. It's hard to be faithful in all things and to never shy away in the face of temptation or fear. To say, no, I don't need this blank stuff looking on the internet. It's bad for me, it's poison. It's garbage, it's filth. If I want to be faithful to Christ, faithful to my wife, to my husband, just even to my friends, I don't want to be looking at porn and all this. I'm avoiding the C word. I don't want to be avoiding this stuff, because I want to be avoiding this stuff so that I can be a good individual for the people I really care about. Well, we need somebody to give us strength to do that. Friends can do it for each other if they're on the same page, but ultimately we need a power that is from outside of ourselves. I need it, and I think sometimes I'm a pretty resilient guy, but I also know from life's experiences I have a limited amount in my gas tank. I need that for that to be constantly renewed, not just from a natural point of view, but from a supernatural point of view. Jesus offers his unwavering love and support to us as our shepherd, but he also wants us to return this gift to him by offering the same unwavering commitment to one another. That's the great thing about Christ. One of the many great things is he doesn't want it for himself, because frankly, he doesn't need it. Christ doesn't need my love. He has everything. He's infinite. But he wants it because he knows that when I give it to him, I experience everything I truly want in life. Sometimes I don't think that's where it is. I think it's over here, but it's actually here with him. And he says, now do for others what I have done for you. And you want to make the world, something akin, the closest thing you can to a paradise, then follow my example. My confidence in going to Israel is in knowing that I have a tour guide, a good one. Because this is totally out of my comfort zone. Last time I was out of North America, 35 years ago. I just really have no desire to travel outside of the country, outside of North America. I've been to the States a couple of times. So it's like, I really have to fight off the stress factor. It's like, what did you do when you said yes, you idiot? But it's probably because Dr. John Bergsma asked me. He teaches with Scott Hahn. And, he emailed me and he said, I jumped at it, and then I thought, oh, what did you do? Now you're committed, you got to do this. And then I didn't realize other things, that I had. But it's sometimes it's important to actually step outside of your box, and do things. Well, with Christ, it's even more so in our life because he's actually guiding our entire life, and we can be stressed out because he does require 100% commitment. And we wonder if things are going to work out the way we want them to. I said before, the word be not afraid is in the Bible 365 times. It seems like God wanted it in there. I'm not kidding. You can go and count it yourself if you want to. 365 times the words don't be afraid or do not be afraid. It seems like God wanted that for every day of the year because we succumb to fear. My confidence, so much more so is the pilgrimage that you and I take through life. If you want a little less stress, or perhaps even to eliminate all stress, or as much stress as we can in this world, if you really want to navigate it successfully, be led by someone who really knows the terrain and inherit the incredible promises stated very clearly in the gospel of this Sunday by the only person who can really give it to you, and that's Jesus Christ. So the ask this week is this: when you wake up every day this week, renew your dedication to Jesus, the Good Shepherd, with these very simple words. You can make up your own. I'll put them in the YouTube, whatever, that little box there under the clip. Lord, you're my only Lord. You're my only King, my Good Shepherd. Help me to be a man or woman after your own heart. Just as David was described as a man after God's own heart. He was very imperfect, David, but he did have a deep love for God. And so he's described as having a heart after God's own heart. To me, that's what I want to achieve or acquire or have in this life. So, help me to be a man or woman after your own heart. Help me to follow you and no one else.